Calling the meeting to order. Please remember that we are being recorded. Public input. The input is for the purpose of permitting people in the gallery to provide input. It should be no longer than 30 minutes unless provided by a majority vote of council. Each speaker may provide respectful comment on any topic they deem appropriate and not necessary to the topics of the agenda of the meeting. The public input opportunity is meant for inputting questions and answers. The speaker may not speak longer than 2 minutes and may have a second opportunity to speak if time permits. Each speaker must not be allowed to speak regarding bylaws in respect to a public hearing has been held. For the record, they would state their name and address. So that has been moved to the end of the meeting. Introduction of late items. Seeing none. Approval of agenda. That the agenda for the regular meeting of Council March 2nd, 2021 be approved. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Wes, you're back.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Minutes from the previous.
My agenda is not moving. I can't see what you're reading now.
I'm sorry, Councillor Kirschner.
Oh, I'm sorry. The agenda is not moving on my screen. I can't see what you're reading now.
Okay, we're on number 5.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see the top. Do we have, there we go. Number 5, minutes of previous meeting. Recommended resolution that the minutes for the regular council meeting held on the 16th of February, 2021 be adopted. Do I have a motion?
So I'll move it.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none? Motion carried. Petitions and delegations. Tonight, we have from BC Assessment doing a presentation, Maurice Primo, RE Deputy Assessor, Vancouver Island Region, presentation on investment trends and asset values in Sayward and North Vancouver Island. Mr. Primo, are you on there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, that's not a good thing.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, I'm there. Okay, good.
Just to remind you, sir, that we are being recorded.
Yes, thank you.
It's all yours.
Okay. Let me just get going here. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. And from the beginning. Just want to make sure I can see everything. Sorry for just setting up. Oops.
It's all good.
And share. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
No.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you cannot.
Oh, it's a blank. It's just black.
Oh,
It's just black. Let's try this
yes.
again.
Overview Village of Sayward. Overview of assessment.
Yeah, the title screen. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't see that, Mark?
No, but I have the IT people coming in.
Oh.
So far, we've determined that it's weird.
Oh, and my camera turned off.
Yeah, that might be it.
Sue can see him. Or
I have him on mine as well.
You can see him as well?
Yeah.
You can see my face or my presentation?
Here we are.
I can see the presentation.
Oh.
I can't see your face though.
Yeah, it's locked me out of that now. You can share your video when you're done screen sharing, it says. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Thank
I
you.
just, sorry, go ahead, please.
We're good.
Okay, I'm just going to roll ahead with it here because I know you have a pretty full agenda and lots to do, and I don't want to take a lot of your time this evening. Okay, so let's go. First off, I'd like to thank the mayor and council and the village of Sayward for inviting me this evening, particularly Anne McDonald, who reached out to me last week. For those of you who remember me, if you could see my face, I visited your community in January of 2019 and made a similar presentation to the citizens and council of the day. So moving right along, I just want to make sure, can everyone still see my presentation screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So some of the topics we're going to cover tonight are a little bit about BC assessment, valuation, classification, assessment cycle, key dates, relationship between assessment and taxes, a little bit of a role overview, province, island, North Island, Sayward, and then some very important pieces around collaborating with BC assessment. So a little bit on who we are, what we do, and how we do it. Established in 1974 under the Assessment Authority Act as a result of nonpartisan commission tasked with examining property assessments and taxation, the commission recommended a creation of a province-wide assessment authority to fairly and independently value all properties in the province of British Columbia. The value of all real estate on the annual provincial assessment roll provides the foundation for local and provincial taxing authorities to finance communities with billions of dollars in property tax revenue. Our product is the annual list of property values on the assessment roll. We treat it as a predictable base for real property taxation in British Columbia, identifying ownership, value, classification, and exemptions for each property, representing almost $2 trillion in total assessed value and raises about $8 billion annually in taxes throughout communities in British Columbia. So how do we value different properties in BC? So we value properties at a point in time in legislation in the Assessment Act as July 1st of each year preceding the assessment roll. So for residential and commercial properties, we use what's called a direct comparison approach to look at sales that have happened in a similar property type and see what the market has done in that property type and raise values or lower values accordingly. Market value is the most probable price in which a property would bring in a competitive market set under all conditions requisite to a fair sale, the buyer and seller each acting prudently, knowledgeably, and assuming the price is not affected by undue stimulus. This is the basis and the foundation for how we examine all of the sales transactions for which we rely upon to set the annual assessment roll. There are some properties that are set with legislated rates, such as utilities, some industry properties, forest, and farms. They are set by cabinet, and we apply those rates as per cabinet. Factors affecting market value. So there are some very important pieces here that one needs to consider in determining what the market value is going to be of a property overall. Location is very important. Proximity to amenities, transit, employment, recreation. The old real estate adage, location, 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 is one of the truest things in valuing real estate and determining market value. Land use controls such as an official community plan, neighborhood plan, zoning, restrictive covenants, land characteristics such as area, shape, and topography, access to utilities and services are also an influence. Building characteristics such as size, use, quality, age, condition also come into consideration of the value of a property. And for commercial properties, the income potential, rentable value, expenses such as management and structural repairs and maintenance, vacancy and capitalization rates are reviewed when it comes to most commercial properties. In our business, in real estate, we always look to highest and best use. And when we value a property on the assessment roll, we value it at its highest and best use. And this is, as it says, the foundation of market value, which is the reasonable probable use that a property is physically possible. What are the physical uses of a particular property? They could be affected by access to services, geotechnical constraints, slope, stability, rock outcroppings. What uses are legally permitted by law? Land use controls, including official community plans and zoning land uses, designations, restrictive covenants, etc. What uses are financially feasible? Uses for the property that generate a return above and beyond the cost to develop them. And what is the most productive use of the physically possible, legally permitted, financially feasible uses, which results in the highest value overall? So these are considerations that we take in, these are pieces that we take into consideration when we value properties every year on the roll in BC. So now let's talk a little bit about how land use can affect market value. Local governments primarily impact highest and best use, the previous slide we just discussed, via land use controls and development approvals, as market value is impacted by the legal and approved uses of a property. When land use controls change, for example, to permit higher density use, the highest and best use of a site can change, which may lead to a change in market value should market evidence or sales dictate a change is warranted. For example, if you change the zoning on a large parcel in your community to be multifamily or higher density, we will receive that information from the village of Sayward, and we will apply a highest and best use analysis to that site and reflect the highest and best use value based on all the factors I spoke about in highest and best use to determine a value for the assessment roll. So it's very important that we have all those pieces when we make our conclusion of value in the end. So we valued all your properties in your community, and here's this next slide speaks to how we classify properties. So we have what's called the prescribed property class regulation, which is a document or a law that gives us guidance as to how we should classify a certain property every year in application to the assessment roll. So why do we have this? Property classes allow a variable tax rate system, different tax rates by property type. So the burden of taxes is distributed among those particular property classes per different governing pieces of legislation, possibly the School Act, Community Charter, the Local Government Act, the Rural Taxation Act, etc. So just to give you an idea, if this is new to you, a little bit about the prescribed property class regulation and how we classify properties. Class 1 are land and improvements, or both, used for residential purposes, including single-family dwellings, duplexes, multifamily, apartments, condos, manufactured homes, nursing homes, rest homes. The list is quite exhaustive, but it specifically points to residential use. Class 2, utilities, transportation, transmission, or distribution by pipeline, telecommunications, electricity, etc. Those are typically set by rates in cabinet. Supportive housing, there's very limited properties that are available on this list, and it's called Schedule B of the property class regs, which must pass through legislation each year before we can apply class 3 to a specific property. Major industry can be land use in conjunction with the operation of industrial improvements and industrial improvements. Class 5 light industry is used or held for the purpose of extracting, processing, manufacturing, or transportation of products, or used for the storage of the aforementioned products. Class 6 include all land and improvements not included in classes 1 through 5 and 7 through 9. So this typically is commercial producing properties, what we call income, commercial, and investment properties, and other. So anything that would not fit into another property class will fall into class 6. Class 7, this is land, managed forest land. Property must include only land meeting the definition of managed forest lands. And at BC Assessment, we have a small division at head office, and that's exclusively what they focus on because it's quite an involved process. Recreation not-for-profit, think of golf, tennis, ball games of any kind, public swimming pools, museums, marinas, parks, and gardens open to the public would be in as class 8, rec not-for-profit. And class 9, farmland, land classified as farm by the farm regulations of British Columbia. In summary, based on an income and area in production, will determine farm classification each year or for each group of years, depending on amount produced and size of land. I'd just like to go over the annual assessment cycle. I think it's important to remember that we are a cyclical business and we repeat our processes each year according to the Assessment Act. So we just had January 1st to 31st, our inquiry period, to the opportunity for property owners to call and question their assessed value or information on their assessment notice to our offices. Which also provided the PARP appeal deadline. And I'm sorry, the slide is incorrect. It was actually February 1st this year. Then from February 2nd to March 31st this year, we're currently in this piece right now. We have the Property Assessment Review Panel hearing appeals across British Columbia to generate and provide the revised assessment rule this year. One notable piece this year with COVID-19, we've moved to an all digital platform for all of our assessment appeal hearings, which will generate a significant savings for BC Assessment and the taxpayer, as we don't book hotels, meeting facilities, or that sort of thing any longer. So there's a good savings there, and thanks to COVID. April 1st to September 30th, new assessment projects are completed. We inspect the new construction that you provide in your building permits. April 30th is the deadline to apply to the Property Assessment Appeal Board, which is a formalized level of review after the Property Assessment Review Panel. There you pay a fee to be part of the process, and you submit a formalized written brief to defend your argument from PARP. July 1st is our evaluation date, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. October 1st to December 31st, we dig in and we start producing the annual assessment roll, reviewing all the sales and activity and information that's provided to us throughout the year. October the 31st is our physical condition and permitted use of a property as of certain date. As of that date, that is what we will reflect on the assessment roll. Ownership reflected in land titles as of November 30th. December 31st, assessment notices produced and mailed. December 31st, those on the assessment roll are liable for the taxation. An important slide to remember, this is more for your members of your community, the relationship between assessment and taxation. So every year, around the end of March, early April, we produce the revised assessment roll and turn it over to the municipalities and local governments in British Columbia. There they start digging in and they start determining their tax rates set by their rules and regulations for each of the prescribed property classes. And then that results in the taxes payable to the local governments, typically due on July 1st of each year. Another important slide, this is actually printed on all of the assessment notices, because there is a bit of a misnomer out there that a 20% increase, say, in your assessment will equate to a 20% increase in your taxes. In my 15 years with BC Assessment, I hear this every year, and this is an image we created to help answer those questions. So if you're, let's say a 10% increase in the residential properties in a community. If you only went up 5%, taxes, it's likely that your taxes will decrease and be lower than those who went up 10%. If you were similar to the average change in a community, your taxes will likely be stabilized. If you're higher than the average change in a property class, you're likely going to have a tax increase over previous. Now, this model works only when, all things remain equal and perhaps the local government isn't investing any further money, or they need the same budgetary amount as a previous amount in previous years. Then this model would come into play to explain how your increase will impact your overall increase or decrease or stabilization of taxes. Now, I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of what happened in BC, Vancouver Island, and then Sayward. So some highlights from our provincial assessment roll. These are always quite interesting. So we've seen an increase of the number of folios added to the assessment roll at just over 2.1 million folios in the province. We've seen an increase in the total value of the annual assessment roll of 3.9%. To a total value of almost $2 trillion. Non-market change, that is the extra revenues that come from change to the assessment roll not related to market. So new construction, subdivisions, that sort of thing. It was down quite a bit last year in most aspects. However, there's some interesting conflicting information to that coming up in the next couple of slides. Okay, so just as a bit of a fun fact, when we first were formed in 1974, there were only 879,000 folios on the roll. Now we're at 2.1 million. The total assessed value of the province in 1975 was 42.2 billion, and now we're sitting at just over 2 trillion in 2021. Quite the growth over the last 40 plus years. So province-wide, just to give you an idea about residential single-family homes and residential strata, this makes up roughly 80 to 85% of our annual assessment roll provincially. Overall, Vancouver Island's total assessments increased from about 255 billion in 2020 to 269 billion this year. Over 3.47 billion of the region's updated assessments is from new construction, subdivisions, and rezoning of properties, or what I called non-market change in a previous slide. BC Assessments Vancouver Island region includes all communities located within Greater Victoria, South Island, Central Island, North Island, the West Coast, Northern and Southern Gulf Islands, and Powell River. So we have quite a large area for the Vancouver Island region. So every year we produce a media release, and this is quite interesting information because we look at the typical assessed value of a single family dwelling year over year and determine what the market change was. And this is the most sought after information by our media counterparts. So as you can see in the South Island, from Victoria right up to the Malahat and the Gulf Islands, we saw about a 4 to 10% change, which is quite in step with the rest of British Columbia, very stable. For the Mid-Island, from the Malahat up to north of Qualicum, Port Alberni, we saw a 3 to 11% change, again in step with most of the province, and you can see there the increases are fairly stabilized across the Mid-Island. Now, a little bit of an interesting different twist for the North Island. So you can see from Cumberland, Comox, Courtenay north, you can see quite a variety of different increases and changes that have happened on the typical single family dwelling on the annual assessment roll. One interesting piece to note here, so you see Sayward went up 3%. We had some communities such as Tassus that went up 36%. We had some communities that jumped 10, 12, 17%, and then some that were stabilized. The more these communities were more stabilized over others. But it's interesting to note when you look at this, Sayward median single family dwelling values are now at pace with Port Hardy, Port McNeill, Gold River, and Tassus is getting very close. I read that wrong, my apologies. They're more in pace with Port Hardy, Port Neil, and Gold River, with Tassus, Alert Bay, and Zabalis on the rise. That's what I meant to say, sorry about that. So let's have a look at the annual assessment roll. So this is a very high level summary of the reporting that we do, and this is typically examined by your CFO. So there was Anne McDonald had asked me to kind of talk to what happened a couple of years ago and what's happening today. So in January of 2019, I did make a trip up to your community and spoke with your local governments. And back then we saw some, it's about 8 or 9 sales in the single family dwelling subset that showed the values increased, I think it was about 45%. And this was quite a shock for the community, but I came up and I explained why. So when I look at the sales of properties that have sold in the marketplace in Sayward, I was showing, and I remember I had a visual where I showed the percentage change for all properties on one side of the community and the other side based on the sales that happened in Sayward that year, and it led to a 45% increase. Now, over 2020 and 2021 assessment rolls, we saw a little bit more moderate increases. In 2020, we saw about a 10.6% increase In 2021, sorry, a little tongue-tied, about 3.1%. Both had about a dozen or so sales each year to support that. So as you can see, there's a bit of a downward trend in the overall increases that have happened currently. And if you think back how we are relative to some of the other communities, Gold River, Port Hardy, Port McNeill, the values are starting to come closer together. Oops, sorry, I went too far. So an interesting piece to note here that Class 1 single-family dwellings make up 88% of your Class 1 in your community, about $34.15 million. And I want you to remember these kind of percentages because I'm going to speak to something a little important down the line too. Your strata residential makes up about 5.5% of your Class 1. So in aggregate, your Class 1 alone makes up about 90% of your total Sayward assessment roll on an annual basis at almost $39 million. There was only 2 folios in the entire community that were under appeal this right now to the Property Assessment Review Panel, 2 residential folios. There are no other folios under appeal that I'm aware of in the village of Sayward. There is no outstanding Property Assessment Appeal Board appeals to be heard outstanding, which is good news as well. So just to speak to some other, I spoke to Strata. Strata this year was pretty flat. There was no change in the values of the Strata market in Sayward this year. Class 5 was down about 1.27% to $2.79 million, which makes up about 6.5% of your total roll value. Class 6 business and other took about a 5% drop to $1.14 million as a tax base, or 2.6% of total roll value for your community. And the overall total roll value for the community was around $43.45 million. Now, so what happened on Vancouver Island with residential real estate? This is a very interesting story, and it's ongoing. In March 2020, CMHC predicted a declining residential market due to COVID. They predicted that the market was going to sink because no one was going to buy. That was their prediction back in March. In 2020, as the residential deputy for Vancouver Island, I saw a sales volume jump of over 50% over 2019 sales, and sales higher than list and multiple bids. Home values across Vancouver Island have appreciated this year due to strong demand combined with very limited inventory for sale. Real estate assessments on Vancouver Island were up the typical 5 to 10% comparable to the rest of British Columbia. So we, as I talked about in just a few minutes ago, we did see larger increase in the North Island. Port Alice 12%, Gold River 17, Tassus 36, Zabalis 18. Overall inquiries around property values was down this year about 15% over last year, and appeals were down roughly 40% over last year, which tells us we've come closer to a more stabilized assessment roll. Anecdotally, with the advent of COVID, people are no longer contained to working in urban and suburban settings. People are looking to untapped affordable markets. Unprecedented volume of buyers, or some have called mobs of buyers, are viewing homes for sale across the South and Mid-Island region, putting in offers well above asking prices and waiving inspections as the real estate market continues surging during the pandemic and traditional slower winter months. Today, from the Times Colonist, the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board reported its lowest inventory on record during February as buyer demand continued to outstrip supply. The board covers the entire island north of the Malahat. Last month, 417 single-family properties sold on the island's board MLS service, a 56% jump from February. In the condo category, sales rose from 130 to 56 in the same period. Low inventory continues to dampen sales and frustrate buyers. The demand is there, but there's not enough listings to satisfy it, said the board in a statement. The British Columbia Real Estate Association doesn't see the inventory situation improving until there's more supply, of course. The association and real estate boards are advocating with policymakers and the provincial and regional levels to encourage streamlining the development process so that municipalities can expand supply faster. Prices have risen through the board's area as the benchmark for single-family homes have climbed February to February 2020 over 2021. Campbell River benchmark of a single-family home is now up to 547,700, up 18%, same time over last year. Comox Valley 631,400, up 15%. Duncan 572,000, up 17%. Nanaimo 618,000, up 12%. Parks Qualicum 695,000, up 13%. Port Alberni reached 378,000, up 16% over the benchmark of last year. And the North Island in general is up around 291,900, up 12% February over February. So I thought those were quite interesting stats that came out today that I wanted to share with you, just to give you an idea, just to give you an idea of what is happening currently on Vancouver Island. So another point I want to make too is citizens are jumping on the chance to buy homes after a pause in the market early in the pandemic. According to Royal LePage, interest rates have dropped, making borrowing costs lower than they've seen in decades. And on this slide here, you can see I pulled this morning the interest rates, the fixed 5-year term back in I would say 2006 was just up around 5, and now you can get a 5-year fix for 1.5%, unprecedented interest rates. Clients are coming in with pre-approved fixed 5-year mortgages, and these kind of rates have never ever, when in memory have we seen interest rates for mortgages this low ever. In the first few months of the pandemic, everything slowed down, including home sales. Properties that were already listed dragged on while people waited to see what the COVID fallout would be. And so inventory piled up and the rates stayed low, which yielded, as we can see through the sales, a buying frenzy on Vancouver Island. Class 6 business and other. Now, this was a completely different story than the residential market that I just shared with you. Based on our July 1st valuation date, commercial and industrial sectors were somewhat less uniform than residential properties with varying value changes. Commercial properties with the most likelihood of decreased assessments tend to be in the urban centers and include shopping malls, hotels, and conference facilities, whereas commercial and industrial properties located in suburban and rural areas were more likely to be up in value. Commercial office buildings, meanwhile, have declined somewhat in value, whereas investment apartment buildings have tended to remain stable and even increased slightly in value. Commercial and industrial properties have experienced varying value changes, some more noticeable than others. Okay, so speaking to everything that I just told you about what's been happening in the market, I think it paints a picture for you that change is afoot on Vancouver Island. I've lived on this island for 51 years, and I've seen quite a change in everything from Victoria right up to Port Hardy. As the island continues to change, it's very important that local governments and BC Assessment form very strong partnerships so we can keep pace with the change that's happening and capture the taxation dollars and the assessed values and taxation dollars that your community requires to sustain itself, to grow and develop and serve your citizens. So here's some very important pieces that I'm going to share with you, and I'm happy to share the slide deck later, so you can take these notes away and examine them a little bit further. So here's the piece on collaborating with BC Assessment. We want to ensure that citizens are informed on and understanding the relationship between property taxes and property assessments and why they're important to the successful delivery of services within their community. To assist with this, we ensure our websites are updated with the most current information that we have on file, and we have various YouTube informational videos and maps and charts and stats for everybody that wants to learn a little bit more. By sharing our information between local governments and BC Assessment, we ensure fair and equitable property assessments. The most relevant data we have will apply to the assessed values in your community to ensure that they are fair and equitable. In doing so, we maintain a stable and predicted assessment role. And we can optimize property tax revenues levied by collecting and collected by taxing authorities. When I say that, we're speaking to stability of the assessment roll on an annual basis. I spoke to the appeal process, 2 appeal processes which can impact a roll. As we get a cleaner, more stable assessment roll, we typically find that we have less change and flux in an assessment roll, which can really upset your CFO and finance department when it comes to setting rates and making sure that all the services of the community are covered off. And increases citizen awareness of property assessment and taxation. So these are our mandates where we really want to strongly collaborate with our local governments to make sure we achieve these on a daily basis. So there is some information that I've shared with Ann McDonald about taxing authority information sharing, and this is a very important document that outlines a lot of the process steps that we offer to help gather the information from our local governments and apply it to the annual assessment roll. So building permits and plans, land use controls, changes, development approvals, and permissive and revitalization tax exemptions can affect assessed values, classification, and taxability on properties. That's why, pardon me, it's very important that local government keeps staff and BC assessment informed at all times of such information. Now you see something on here called the standard permit program and the Citrix share file. A Citrix share file shows up in these different methods here, and it's quite important. So Citrix share file is a Canadian-based, cloud-based, Canadian-based FOIPA approved cloud sharing service that BC Assessment is set up to work with our local governments in BC to get us the information as such as, like I was talking, land use controls, development approvals, permissive and revitalization tax exemptions, OCP plans, subdivision plans, anything that you can think of that would impact your assessment roll can be provided to us on a digital platform that we sweep through once every few days, and we distribute out to our team members to ensure that we're gathering information on the assessment roll. The biggest piece that this is used for right now in its infancy is building plans. It's very important that BC Assessment receive building plans, leases of Crown land, tenures, all those sorts of things on a timely manner so we can get them on the roll in a timely manner. Some of the leases and leases of occupation can go on for years, and if they don't get to us in a timely manner, that's lost revenues for a local government. And in a non-rural jurisdiction, you know, if we apply it and it's a couple, 2-3 years behind, we can't go back any further than 1 year. Whereas in the rural 700 series jurors, we can apply to the Surveyor of Taxes under the Rural Taxation Act to apply something in the past if it was critical. So if you have no electronic copies of documentation, we would recommend updating your approval processes to require applicants to provide electronic copies of building and site plans so they can be transferred to us immediately. It saves us the trip to come up. It saves you the hassle of trying to send it to us through the Canada Post. And as you can see, there's a lot of different applications of information that can be shared and supplied with BC Assessment. And finally, there's lots of resources on our BC Assessment website. There is, of course, you know, the public-facing piece where a citizen or a property owner can build a profile and they can research properties relative to theirs. They can save some sales that have happened in their neighborhood, print them off and bring them to the Property Assessment Review Panel or bring to our appraisers for discussion. Conversely, local governments can log in and access all of the data available on Assessment Link, standard building permit reports, service boundary web maps, all the information that a local government would want to seek from BC Assessment in terms of reporting is available through this portal as well. And there's lots of great information about all different property types. We're starting to develop more electronic online forms for easier submission of information. And every year it's growing a little bit more and more. So I encourage everyone to if you haven't been in a while, explore our BC Assessment website and see what's really there. There's quite a bit. Conversely, if you have any questions any time of the year, it doesn't have to be during inquiry period, we invite you to call us at our number 1866 value BC. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Okay,
So
we're
I
gonna start.
will stop sharing. So
Can
stop
you hear
sharing.
me? Okay. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to start off. If there's any questions, we'll start with Councillor
There we
Polson.
go.
Oh, my head is just spinning.
I know, I'm sorry. There was a lot of information presented tonight. It's hard to cut something out and not give the full picture. But again, I'll send the slide deck to Ann McDonald.
That would be
or-
great.
And then you can have it and then reach back to me through her or through Lisa Clark. And I can try to help you there too.
Councillor Craig.
Cool. Yeah, actually, thank you, Maurice. I have a whole bunch of questions, actually.
Okay.
Your presentation was really good, and it gave me a lot of questions. I'm just going to run through them one by one, if that's all right with you, sir.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Excellent. Does your market value take into effect the APR interest rates on the 5-year fixed term? So if rates suddenly drop to 1.5%, will that increase everybody's assessment roll going forward after July 1st?
The answer is no. We strictly only look at sales that happen in a marketplace every year. We don't, that was just for informational purposes to show you that the rates are at the lowest point they've been at in years. It's fueling a buying frenzy because money is cheap to borrow. And there's, well, at the beginning of COVID, there was a surplus of property on the real estate. Now now there's bidding wars. Hundreds of thousands over ask. A property in Vancouver, I heard today, listed for 1.6, sold for 2.4, $800,000 over ask. So to answer your question, no, interest rates do not affect our assessments. I think they more influence the motivation of a buyer to enter a marketplace.
I think you just answered it, but the same question for supply and demand.
Same question. Yeah, so supply and demand does impact the assessment roll, because if we see that the market is willing to pay more for some homes in a marketplace, and we go through the test to determine if it's an arm's length transaction, which is in slide 3 or 4. If that's a bona fide market transaction, and that's what the market is willing to bear on a property type, that's what we reflect on the annual assessment roll. So yes, in an indirect way, supply and demand will ultimately flow through and show up on your assessment roll. As you could see in Tassus, they went up 36% this year. They had a good dozen sales of in their community that warranted an increase. We went through and we picked through every sale to make sure that they were valid. And I reported out to Tassus a couple weeks ago along the same platform I'm doing here now, and shared the sales information with the local council, and they were astonished, when they saw everything in aggregate. Yeah, their community caught up to market eventually. And what I was saying with them is that it's, the North Island has quite low property values compared to the Mid or the South Island, obviously. But and like I said, I've been here 51 years. I moved to Parksville when it was unincorporated in 1974. The island has really changed. It's a very desirable place to live, and real estate was affordable at a time. And now it's starting, the market will always look to what is the next affordable place that I can work or live, I should say. And one of the things influencing very common in this last year is work. With COVID, we've been forced to work from home, or we've been forced to work in different situations, or not even work at all. What we're seeing, and I've talked to realtors and I've talked to other people in the industry, people are looking for that slice of real estate that will get them a little more privacy, will get them a little more space. So the husband and wife can each have an office. If the kids need to be home from school or homeschool, we got a spot for them, and they're held private from the community if they don't want to be in a condo-like setting, like say downtown Vancouver. We're seeing a lot of real estate transactions on Vancouver Island from the mainland coming over to the island. One of the other points I wanted to make too, with the advent of technology, for example, like the Coast Connect or the Coastal Connect that's going on Vancouver Island, you've now got communities that have got 1 gigabit fiber optic internet. You've got communities that offer a large, decent sized piece of land with a house that's affordable. You don't have to work in an urban center any longer. You don't have to work in an office. The mentality and thoughts around the workplace are changing quite dramatically, and people are looking to other places to live. And this is a trend I believe we're going to see continuing on this year in the North Island, where people are looking to the more affordable place to live. You know, just anecdotally, I don't think I'm going to live in Nanaimo my whole life. I would like to move somewhere which is probably a little quieter, and I have my eyes set on the North Island when I retire. So yeah, so I hope that answered that question. It was a little bit of a long-winded roundabout way, but that's what I'm seeing these days.
You absolutely did answer. I appreciate it. So market volatility also increases the assessment. So going on to the next one, we are in this council right here. We're going to be updating our OCP recently in the next little while. Now that we're going to have an updated OCP, will that affect our assessments come July the 1st?
So to answer that in a couple of ways, if you make drastic changes to your OCP, we will reflect those on the roll. If you change some zoning and properties, for example, or extend a boundary, your containment boundary is extended, that will be influenced onto the assessment roll. And if you send it to us in a timely manner so we can get it onto the roll for the end of year as of July 1st, sort of speak, yes, that will definitely influence your role. For example, like the one I gave in the presentation, if you have say a large acreage parcel and you want to develop it into multifamily or subdivide it and change the zoning so you can allow certain types of homes to be built or townhouses or whatever the case may be, if we get that in the OCP, we can apply the highest and best use principles to the properties that are affected by the OCP changes and reflect those on the annual assessment roll. So to answer your question, yes, we can do that.
I appreciate that. 2 more questions.
Sure.
You just touched base on something. If we send you the OCP information, so that actually confused me a little bit. And this goes to your Citrix share file. Is it not an actual requirement for municipalities to share data? Is it just volunteer?
Well, it's a partnership that we have with our local governments to obtain building permit information, subdivision plans. So we can, we are your workhorse in the sense that, okay, this is happening in your community. You give it to BC Assessment to apply to the assessment roll and independently value it for your taxation purposes. So, the OCP is quite an overarching, it's quite a large document, but if you send it to us, we will start pulling it apart and looking at it and see how we can apply any changes within your community. The Citrix share file was just meant as a different way of thinking around getting that information to BC Assessment. With COVID, none of BC Assessment staff traveled anywhere. We couldn't go to local governments to get plans. A lot of local governments were closed due to COVID. They laid off staff. But so there was that gap of not being able to get the information we need to keep the business moving. So we developed the Citrix file share program as an alternative way for local governments to get us the information expeditiously. On, I want to say March 20th, or it was around April 1st, we had over 800 staff at BC Assessment move to working from home. And, I'll just share something I'm quite proud of. We've adopted this culture for quite a long time, I'd say about 4 or 5 years, where we could telework instead of working in an office. And it came to save us in the end for our assessment operations. We were able to deliver our core product. We were 98% able to deliver all of our deliverables on an annual basis working from home. So the Citrix share file was natural for us to come to our minds to think about, okay, so we are used to the technology. We are used to working in a digital, virtual, telework sort of world. How can we give another tool to our local governments to still get that information to us, to still apply it to the annual assessment roll during these challenging times? So it's been quite successful. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but there's quite a few municipalities in British Columbia. And on Vancouver Island, I want to say there's about 20 local governments that are on board with it and actively using Citrix file share to get us the information in an expeditious manner. Think of it as, for example, we used to go to the district in North Cowichan and get building plans. They didn't do digital. We had to make appointments. We had to give the exact roll numbers what we needed. It was very time consuming to send a picker or an appraiser to drive down to North Cowichan to get them, and then only a certain number, and then glean the information from them. And then we'd have to come back another day, another appointment, more travel. This way, if you go digital, you just drop the files into the folder. Our admin staff review it every few days. They'll pull it out and then disseminate it outward to the right teams who need to act on stuff. It's a very flawless, I'm not going to say flawless, but it's a very efficient way of getting the information to us and applying it to the role. We've been using it for about a year now, and with quite good success. I haven't heard of any catastrophic issues that have come from it. It's working quite well in its first year.
Okay.
I think that's good, sir. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Sorry, Wes, your hand is still up.
Oh, lowering it.
Craig? Okay,
Here you go.
well, thank you very much for coming tonight and giving us.
My
your
pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. All the information so I'll just go back. I've given Anne this document, and I hope she'll share it with your local council around information sharing initiatives with BC Assessment. I think we have some work to do together to partnership going forward to help build your tax base. I've entered discussions with Lisa and Anne about that, updating the community, so to speak. And I'll share this slide deck with Anne tomorrow. And any questions that you may think about after tonight's event, I welcome you to funnel them through Anne or Lisa to me, and I'll get you a response as soon as possible.
Thank you. Sorry, CAO, you have a question? CAO, I see your hand up.
We can't hear you, Ann.
I wonder if she's having audio problems.
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
Okay, no, we can't hear our CAO at the moment.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Okay,
Oh, now.
so,
Can you hear me
Oh.
now?
Yeah, faintly.
Okay, I'll make it quick. I just wanted to add, thank you, Mayor Baker. I wanted to say that we did receive the Citrix information, and I do plan to bring that forward to council in the next several weeks or so, whenever we have a bit of space on the agenda for that. And we will be in a better position to respond electronically and capacity to both receive and respond to digital data once we have our new website set up. So
I'm sorry, CAO, you're, there's a lot of feedback,
Echo.
a lot of echo on your line. So we're having a difficult time understanding you. Sorry. Okay, well,
If
Mr.
I
Greenwell,
may,
thank you very much. Any questions? We'll take it through the CAO, which will reach out to you.
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Okay, thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you and good evening to you. Thanks again.
Bye-bye now.
Bye for now.
Did council need to stretch their legs for 5 minutes or are you good?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay. There we go. Petition and get litigation. Okay. Number 7, correspondence. So the recommendation is that correspondence from A to H be received. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second,
I'll second it.
discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull a couple of them.
Go ahead, Councillor Craig. Which would you like to pull?
D, the Event Resiliency Summits Youth and First Nations.
Go ahead.
Just looking at the bottom of page 32, where they have a budgetary item of $14,600. are they requesting that the Village of Sayward come up with $14,600, or they are requesting, or just that's for information as to what they're looking for from another source?
CAO,
Actually, I think what they're looking for is participants to belong to this representative committee. And this isn't an invoice. This is a sort of an order of magnitude cost that that would cover off this course and this program. And there's no cost required that we've been informed of to actual participants or to local governments who send a representative. I think what they've done here is shown their budget that they're planning to do for the facilitation and engagement process that they're proposing to deliver for youth.
I was just a little confused because it says specifically, now we need all these voices reflected in this document in order for it to be truly reflective of Vancouver Island coastal communities. At this time, we are looking for funding to support these next stages of this work. Please see the budget below and reach out with any further questions. They just didn't say where they're looking for the funding. So I'd like to possibly reach out to them to make sure that they're not requesting this amount from us, please.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Craig. I think they're doing what we do when we propose an initiative and then we seek grant funding from various sources. What they're asking for here is to get regional districts and local governments to get young people to participate in the 3 summits that are coming forward. And we haven't really seen any effort at all to identify the cost on an individual basis, although there may be some kind of a registration fee, but we can follow up on that and report back to you if you like.
Yes, please, appreciate it.
second item, Councillor Craig.
No, that was good.
That was the only one you wanted, Paul?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So we have the recommended resolution that correspondence from 8H be received. Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Opposed? Motion carried. Council reports. There are none. Reports of committees. There are none. Mayor's report. When a rising report from the February 16th, 2021 in-camera meeting. And I would like to table the following motion that council discuss evaluation criteria by March 30th, 2021 of the CAO per CAO's contract. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Unfinished business? None. Staff reports. Staff reports January, February 2021. Administrative Office report. Go ahead, CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Can you hear me okay now?
Much
Yes.
better.
Good.
Thank you.
I ditched the headphones, so. First report was compiled by Melissa. Thank you, Melissa, for this. This is an estimate and a summary of the work that she carries out in the Front Administrative Office. And it's basically a list of the work that she has completed in the last 2 months for your information.
Thank you. Recommended resolution that council receives the January to February 2021 Administrative Office report for information and discussion. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
A second.
discussion. Opposed?
Oh, I got some discussion. I just was a little late raising my hand.
Go ahead, Councillor Craig.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm confused as to why we have this report in the first place. My understanding of how procedures work is this council has one employee, just one, and that would be our CAO. And every other employee falls under the CAO's purview. This seems to be a micromanaging attempt to somehow illustrate what the staff is doing to this council, but this council has absolutely no business interfering in any staff issue whatsoever. In fact, if you bear with me 1 second, under the community charter and whatnot, and also the Maple Ridge community charter, interactions and administration as members being council shall not involve themselves in matters of administration except where council or the chief administration officer has approved the involvement or where there's legislative authority for it. And it goes on and on and on. But the point of it being is whatever happens in that office, we don't have any business about. We have the business of setting a budget for the CAO to follow. And the rest of what happens under the CAO's roof is the CAO's staff. So if the CAO wants to have her staff do whatever, if they're even doing nothing, that's none of our business. We have no standing to even get a report like this, in my opinion, to find out what her staff is doing, because it's none of our business whatsoever.
So Councillor Craig,
that's my assessment here.
Councillor Craig, are you assuming that somebody from the council has asked for that report?
No, I'm assuming that this council may not know the procedures, that we don't have any business being involved with the staff.
Well, let's let the CAO explain the report, please, before we.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Baker. Well, I think Melissa is actually the one who initiated this. I think in response to the request that we provide department report based on, the activities in and out of the fire hall. We've had reports on the nursing station. We've been gathering information on various other activities from agencies, and I think the intent here was to just provide an overview of the volumes of work that were being completed by admin staff. However, having heard that and heard Councillor Craig's comments, I'm certain that Melissa would not be at all offended to not complete this task on a regular basis for council if that's council's wish. So
Sorry, CAO, were you requested by anybody on council, mayor or council, to produce that report?
no, I think this I'm not sure where the concern is. We certainly don't need to provide this information. I'd have to go back, having only been here for several months now, to see whether or not this was provided to councils in the past. There's sometimes a bit of a protocols for these sorts of things. It's obviously the first one we brought forward in my tenure and in the tenure of this council, having the 3 new members. So I can follow up and find out whether or not this has been, but certainly if council doesn't need it, we don't need to do it. That's for sure. You can see from the list that it's a very busy office. So one less task is something that would be welcome for sure.
Okay, so I'm under the impression, Councillor Craig, that it was brought to our attention to appreciate the work that's being done by the administrative staff and not something that's been requested by any member of council.
Well, even so, if it was meant for an appreciation, Mr. Mayor, it's not warranted under any of the recognized procedures of council.
I don't disagree. Okay, moving on. So we have anybody opposed?
I'll be opposed to it.
Okay, thank you.
What are you opposed to? Excuse me.
Receiving the report.
Oh, okay.
To seeing the report is what you're opposed to?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion carried. B, staff report, street light replacement schedule from BC Hydro. CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. This is another information piece. Previous council had reviewed the proposed street lighting replacement project that BC Hydro is embarking upon. As indicated in the staff report, this is a legal requirement under the Government of Canada Federal Polycarbonated Biphenyls regulation that requires a removal of all PCPs by December 23rd of 2025. There has been some discussion in the community about the concern for the new lights. There is some newspaper articles about what were called monster lights in somewhere south on the island, and a concern about the loss of the dark sky in what is primarily a rural natural community. So I wanted to just provide a bit of an update. First of all, the work will be done in early April. So sometime in April, the 71 street lights, which are currently existing in the village of Saywood, will be replaced with the new LED street lighting. A previous council had made a selection for the 3000 Kelvin option, which is a softer lighting. It's the softest lighting that's possible under their list, and I've included some bit of a information kit, which I think has been placed in the correspondence section of the agenda. So it's a good overview of the street lighting options and how they'll look. And so I think there's some charges in here, which is a little bit controversial, but unresolved. I think it's before the regulatory bodies, but essentially BC Hydro in being required by law to depreciate the existing PCB lights has made effort to pass that cost back to local governments, because every product, of course, has a life through the asset management program. And because they're required to retire these lights early, they have passed along that capital cost, the premature retirement cost, I guess is what it really is, for the old lights and their undepreciated value to local governments. And that is something that has been reviewed by the federal regulators, or provincial regulators. So we'll see if that changes, but as it stands, there will be some fees for that, and they're outlined here in the staff report. There doesn't seem to be a lot of room to move. There's no choice in the lighting. It's a standard light choice across the province. What local governments have an option to choose is how bright they are. And so this community chose the 3000 K option, which is the softest light available. And so hopefully that will, after a bit of change, people will become used to that, the LED lights. And of course, it's a good thing for the environment, because those products break down and have been found in the tissues of fish and birds and wildlife and humans. So that is the summary of this staff report.
Thank you. So resolution that the council receive the street lighting replacement schedule for BC Hydro report, information and discussion. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Councillor Craig, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the CAO. The LED lights are going to cost approximately 178, well, not approximately, according to the BC Hydro, $178.24 extra per month. Our current HPS charges are $16.21, and our LED charges are going to be approximately $1,800 a month. With the switch to the LED lights, are we able to offset that with any kind of carbon credits that you know of?
Well,
from the federal government?
Thank you, through the mayor, to Councillor Craig. That's a really good question. I can follow up on that. I don't know the answer. If anybody could claim that, it might be BC Hydro, because they're actually doing the work. Although since they're passing the cost off, it would seem fair that those revenues be shared as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carried. Okay, so staff report, revenue anticipation bylaw 470. CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. And I may pass this over to the CFO for her to expand upon. Essentially, this is an administrative bylaw which provides for local governments to borrow funding if they need it, if there's any kind of a shortfall between the time that we receive tax revenues, which is of course after July 1st, And if we have expenses that don't flow in, a good example might be the replacement of the Newcastle Dam. Well, the work will start there on July the 1st, but we may see some preliminary costs come our way in advance of that, because there'll be, of course, engineering and assessment work. We've got all of the funds allocated through grant funding, 100%, but we may not get the flow in until the actual work starts and we start doing our reporting to the province. So this bylaw is to provide for that, and it's one that all communities generally obtain to allow for that period. And we only use it if we need it. So that's about as deep as I can provide. So any deeper than that should be addressed by the CFO, please.
So CFO, do you have any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any additional comments. As the CAO has said, it's basically, an if we need it, we will use it. But at any point that staff believe the line of credit will be used, we would bring that report back to council with an outline of the costs, the interest rate, and what it's going to cost for the village. But at this point, I don't anticipate a need for it. It's just an in case. It's basically an insurance policy to make sure that we have enough cash to cover our expenditures. Thank you.
Thank you. Recommended resolution that council receive the revenue anticipation bylaw 2021 report for information and discussion. Do I have a motion, please?
So
Do I have a second?
Second.
Sorry. CFO, you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out my recommended resolution. It does say to provide the first 3 readings of the bylaw, but that is coming up next on the agenda. So at this point, it's just a resolution to accept the report, and then the bylaw is later.
Thank you. Discussion? Opposed?
Just a minute.
Sorry.
I just had a question. When I read through the bylaw, it seems, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, through to the CFO. I just had the question about where it says that council will is hereby empowered and authorized to borrow upon the credit of the municipality. And I wasn't clear when I read that how council would know that we needed to borrow money. So I wondered if there should be something in the bylaw that says on the recommendation of staff, or how council will know that we need to borrow money.
CAO?
Sorry, is that CAO?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Baker. And I think the staff report indicates that in the event that cash flow becomes an issue and the line of credit is needed, staff will prepare a report to council to inform them of such activity and provide a detailed analysis of interest costs and payment terms. I'm hoping that answers your question, but if not, perhaps I could call upon the CFO to elaborate, please.
Thank you.
Sorry.
To the mayor and council. Basically, the bylaw is just stating that council is authorized to borrow up to $700,000 if needed. So it's just the wording in the bylaw that you are authorized to borrow that money. But as the CAO said, a report would be brought back to council outlining the amounts of money that are needed and the interest, etc.
Okay, but that isn't in the actual bylaw wording, is it? What were you quoting from, CFO?
Through the mayor to Councillor Poulsen. Basically, the bylaw is standard wording. So I've used wording that other municipalities have used in their bylaws. So there isn't really anything, in my opinion, that needs to be added. if council would like me to look at it a bit more, then I can definitely do that. But again, it's just standard wording from other municipalities.
Councillor Polson?
Well, that's okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Polson, your hand is still up?
Oh,
Your virtual hand, that is. So, opposed?
oh yeah.
Seeing none, motion carried. Staff report on the financial plan 2021, CAO.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the mayor to council, I think you've seen this several times. And this is, we're asking that council approve this financial plan tonight. We have a couple of amendments which we can talk to, but I'd like to hand it over to the CFO who's done all the good work on this project and have her take it from there, please.
Thank you to Mayor and Council. As the CEO has mentioned, you've seen several versions of the financial plan. So tonight it's being brought to Council as opposed to the Committee of the Whole, is where we normally look at the financial plan. It's now brought to Council for final approval. I've basically just included everything that we've discussed up to date and all of the summary sheets for you to reference. One of the things that we needed to bring to council tonight was the need to increase the budget for the keyless entry system for the village office. So that's on page 73 under village operations. The original budget was $2,000 and the quotes that we've received were quite over budget. The lowest quote that we received was about $8,700. So we are asking council to approve an increase to the budget for that line item to $9,000. And the other item that we wanted to discuss was the doors for the Kelsey Centre. We have come in within budget for the plexiglass, for the egress, for the in and out system, people coming into the building, and also the front doors with touchless entry. That's all within budget. Additional doors that need to be replaced are that's going to be discussed in April. We're going to bring a more complete report to council in regards to the Kelsey Centre at that time, and that can be discussed then, because the funds are it's not in the budget right now for the remainder of the doors, so that'll be brought to council at a later time. And I think the other item that maybe the CIO would like to discuss is the generators for the sewer lift stations. Thank you.
Okay, so question, from 2,000 to 8,700. Now, in the budget that was approved, was there extra monies remaining from that, from other projects or expenditures?
In response, Mayor Baker, the when you go through this page of COVID-related expenditures, we have purchased a laptop, so the $6,000 was pretty close to our budget, and that's what we've purchased. We've ordered the public address system, which is very close to that price as well, so we were pretty close, you know, within just a few dollars. We have acquired most of the hazmat gear under item 5 on page 73. We are still formulating how to build the dock, but expect that to be well within the 13,000. We won't know exactly how much overlap there is there until we get that dock finished, really, which will happen once the ground is a little drier and it's, you know, we're into the season of building. But I'd just like to remind everybody that the funding came from the $268,000 that was provided to the village through the COVID recovery funding from the province. And so we, of that, have probably close to just over 200,000 left. So we are within the big basket. And we may have more money within the big basket if we don't spend it all on the dog. I think that is the total of the COVID money. Of course, we will still continue to identify and respond to lost revenue options and expenses that are related to COVID-19 and allocate those costs to the COVID budget, the Safe Restart Reserve that we've got put aside. So that also could be, there could be a certain amount of movement there, but these were the bulk of the expenditures that council had approved.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Craig, you have a question?
Yeah, with respect, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps I've missed it, but have we actually accepted this report for discussion yet?
CAO?
It's possible that we haven't got to the resolution, Mayor Baker. We have gotten into the discussion before you've actually tabled the resolutions.
Yeah, so this is the place to discuss all these matters. Is that not correct?
We have to receive the report first, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. The council receives the financial plan for 2021 to 2025, final report and information, discussion, end. The council approves the 2021-2025 financial plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Sorry.
Discussion? In regarding to the financial plan, I just have a question. This is the time under capital budget, CAO, it shows resurfacing Kelsey Way, and that for 700,000. Can I get clarification on that, please?
Can you give me the page number, please?
I'm sorry, I don't have a page number. It's just the capital budget where you have general capital fund, water capital fund, sewer capital fund. Maybe CFO can jump in and give me a hand there. Oh, 79.
Okay.
It's 2 pages, sorry. So 78.
Yeah, I think this is the details of this can be provided by the CFO, please.
Thank you to Mayor and Council. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, are you just looking at the 2023 capital expenditures for roads for resurfacing Kelsey Way and Cusum Way? Is that what you're looking at?
That's correct.
So that has been put into the capital plan as a placeholder. So I know in meetings past we've discussed going through the asset management plan, determining whether the infrastructure underneath the roads needs to be replaced before the roads are replaced. So at this point, that's, for 2023, it's just in there as a placeholder. It does not mean that that's actually going to happen because the budget is looked at every single year. So next year, once council has had an opportunity to review the asset management plan and go through that whole process of looking at, the sewer lines, the water lines, and all of that infrastructure and determining next steps, that's when the budget is relooked at for the future years, and that item can either be taken out or moved to a future year.
So CFO, does that affect our taxation for this year at all? Having in the 5-year?
It does not, no.
No? Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Craig, you have a question?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. I don't see a detailed report on the pool and the hot tub issues or a cost to fix them. Now, I know Councillor Polson and I had mentioned this either last or the before last council meeting, and it was suggested that we were going to have a separate meeting about this, but I don't see that anywhere here. I would very much like to see a report on any deficiencies that the pool and or hot tub have and a cost to fix it to be included in this financial plan. Thank you.
CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Baker, and through to Councillor Craig. We did not include the wish list of items in the financial plan because A couple of reasons. First of all, we want to bring the entire Kelsey Centre issue as a package to council to look at options, which include a range of things. Some of them might be new doors, new pool liner, hot tub sort of thing, upgrades. But we wanted to bring this in the context of the asset management project because the Kelsey Centre has some deficiencies and some needs. However, it isn't rated as the most important asset to invest in the community, that being the water and sewer infrastructure. So we wanted to bring that's why we handed out the binders of the asset management about 2 weeks ago. That's quite a big binder, and hopefully it's giving you all a good night's sleep because it's not great reading, but it's important to look at it in the context because as the previous speaker talked about, Maurice Primo, council will be facing some pretty significant bills over the next several years because the water and sewer infrastructure has reached the end of its useful life. And so it's important for council to look at all the investments that are required, and we thought that could best be done through an asset management workshop in a COW meeting, where we would include all the wish lists. If we were to put it in the financial plan now, it would be something that could be spread out over several years, I suppose, but we would still need to find the money, which would either be a tax increase. Whereas if we look at it through the asset management program, there's a number of other tools we can use to amortize those costs and share them out and spread them out. So I was hoping that we could have it in the discussion in that light rather than include them here. We do know what they are, and we have sat down with staff. We have a pretty good idea of what needs to be done. Part of it is the door issues, of course. And we looked at that, at possibly bringing that forward tonight. There's probably about another $23,000 that we need to cover the other doors, other than the 2 doors that are the main ones with the glass entry for safety reasons for staff and users. The other doors, I've got pictures that I can send to you that there's all kinds of light cracks that go through, so we're losing a lot of heat. And we'd like to bring that forward. However, we want to check first with the province to find out whether or not that funding that we received through the COVID resiliency work will cover those doors. It's not really readily apparent that it would, and we didn't want to be in the position of having spent the money and then find out the province won't allow us to use that money. So, but that's about 30,000 right there for just the doors. And then we know what the costs are for the pool, retiling of the pool and some of the other work in there. So what we've done is identified the priorities for safety and then hoped to bring a more complete package in the context of the asset management work in another month or so.
Thank you. CFO, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Craig, I think it's also important just to remember that the financial plan can be amended at any time. I know I've said that a few times. So if a report is brought to council in the next month or so about the Kelsey Centre and all of the options and all of the immediate items that need to be addressed and the costs associated with that, at that point, I can definitely bring back a report to council stating, here's where the funding could be pulled from. This project hasn't happened yet and it isn't as a high priority as the Kelsey Centre. And at that point, the financial plan could be amended depending on what decisions council makes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, is the $10,000 for solar panels, is that going into the discussion on the Kelsey Centre? CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. I believe the solar panels, that was a carry forward, and it wasn't determined whether they would go on the Kelsey Centre or the water treatment plant. So we're bringing that forward, and I think that's probably one of the things that we've got the money in here. Whether or not we spend it depends on, as we get estimates and get the details, which we would then come back to council on. So it's here. It's on page 73 under the Living Green section of the strategic plan. And so that could proceed. I have another item to add, but I just want to check to see if that answers your question.
Yes, I was just looking to see whether or not the 10,000, if it's spent at the Kelsey Center or at the water treatment plant, what are going to be the savings for us in terms of power usage on either location? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, CAO.
The other item I wanted to just bring your minds to is on page 72. And that is the 4 permanent generators for the 4 lift stations. We've just received the estimates yesterday and today on those generators. We considered, requesting council support to add them to the financial plan this year and to use the COVID resiliency money. But again, we'd like to check in with the province to make sure that we're not left holding that bag if they determine that the criteria didn't apply. But we're looking at about 143,000 for those 4 generators, which also includes a 5-year warranty for all of the maintenance and the parts. And again, we've had this discussion about the problem of power outages and the requirement to use the temporary generators and tow them around. But so it seems to be a very important expenditure, but we don't want to make it until we confirm that the COVID money will cover that. So, and also, we also have a grant application in that was submitted in January 6th for that money. And so we're hoping that one of those 2 sources panned out and that council would support that expenditure at a later date, which would mean that we have it in the capital plan, but we would only spend it once we secure the funding.
Okay, thank you. It's a recommended resolution. The council received the proposed revision. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Yeah, we're going to go on. Sorry, folks, I had just a moment there. I'm back. Okay, so that's been approved. Is that not correct, CAO? Financial plan recommendation?
That's right. Yes, thank you.
So the next is that council received the proposed revision for bylaw 416 from 2015 council procedure bylaw, report and information discussed, and the staff post notice the proposed revision of the village website on the village website. I can't even speak anymore. Apologies. That staff post notice on the proposed revisions on the village website and the Campbell River Mirror, the notice board, and the Village of Sayward News, April 2021 edition, and that finally staff returned April 6, 2021 for the council meeting with the summary comments received and the proposed revision and the request for council to consider 4th reading and final adoption. CAO, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if I missed something there, but did council approve and vote on and carry the motion to adopt and approve the financial plan? Did I miss that?
We did not.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I thought we did.
Yeah, sorry, we didn't go through the formal voting and carry and all of that.
Sorry, I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
You bet.
Second.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Sorry, CFO, you have your hand up?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to mention to council that it's approving the 2021 to 2025 financial plan as amended because we've added that additional budget item for the FOBs.
Correct. Thank you. So do we have to redo that amended motion? CAO? Do we have to do it again with the amended?
So the motion would read, are you asking about the financial plan motion, Mayor Baker?
Yes, and including
So
the
motion would read that council approve the 2021-2025 financial plan as amended.
Oh. As amended. Okay, do I have a motion, please?
Also move.
Second? Can I have a second, please?
Norm has left the building for a second. I'm sorry, I do have a question on that. Now is not the appropriate time, and I'm out of order for even asking it, but does this include the keyless entry systems with the upgraded price? of $9,000.
CAO?
Yes, Mayor Baker to Councillor Craig. Yes, that would include the additional $7,000 that we've requested to be allocated from the COVID recovery funds to provide for the keyless entry and the fobs for the doors that are noted.
I apologize for being out of order in that question.
That's fine. Do we have, is that all the discussion? Okay. Opposed?
I am opposed.
Okay. And okay, anyone else? Sorry, CFO? CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. I note that Councillor Kirschner has left the room, and I wonder, do we want to hold off the vote? And now he's back, so.
Okay. Well, Councillor Kirschner's back.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I had to go
That's great.
for
Thanks.
the washroom.
Thanks for sharing. Okay, Councillor Kirschner, Councillor Craig has brought up, due to the amendment, they're asking for the $8,700 for the keyless entry system. Our budget was 2,000 and now it's 8,700. So the motion was amended to bring forth. Councillor Craig is against, and I'm assuming it's for the keyless entry. Is that correct, Councillor Craig?
That is correct, yes.
I also have some concerns regarding spending $8,700 on keyless entry. Can we have that come back at a later date? CAO?
Yes, thank you. I guess it's important to know that we're not just talking about fobs here. This is part of the keyless entry includes the security system, and I think maybe the CFO can give the breakdown of that. She's been collecting the estimates, and so it's not just the key fobs that's included in the price, but we certainly can come back if that's council's wish.
Can we get clarification on what it's including, please, CFO?
Thank you to Mayor and Council. The $8,700 includes upgrading 4 doors. So the exterior admin front door, the door to the council and mayor office, the interior door between the admin area and the hallway, and the other interior door between the hallway and I guess sort of the weight room area. So just behind the mayor and council and CAO office. And that quote includes putting in new hardware for the doors, the pads that will be used for the fobs, and the fobs themselves. So I think as another note, we did get another quote that was double that amount. So, you know, looking at the quotes that we got, and the hardware that's involved in upgrading the doors for the fob system, you know, that was the lowest price we could get. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's okay. So we'll go on from discussion, and we will go to opposed. Was Councillor Craig
And Councillor Kirschner.
and Councillor Kirschner?
Yes, I can't find my hand here. But yes, I am. There's too much of a difference, I think.
Okay. So we have, that would be a tie. Is that correct? Since we have only 4,
It would be defeated, Mayor.
it would be defeated.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll bring that back at a later date with Brad, and we'll talk, sorry, CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to confirm the resolution was that council approves the 2021 to 2025 financial plan as amended. That resolution has been defeated. Can I confirm that the original motion that council approves the 2021 to 2025 financial plan, has that motion carried?
I don't think we voted on that one yet.
we'll vote on that right now. So do I have a motion, please?
That motion's kind of moot because the keyless entry system at $2,000 cannot be achieved. So it's $2,000 that won't be able to buy anything.
CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Well, like all of the other items that are in here, that was the upper cost that council provided the authority to staff to use the money for. Again, we haven't spent all of the money for the hazmat gear in the dock, but it's in here. So the $2,000, obviously we underestimated that cost, and that's why there's a difference now. Had we put a higher value in there, it might not have been as shocking as it is. But again, it is a technology kind of related system, which is, enhanced security as well as the actual hardware. So that provides for the touchless situation during the COVID, which is why it qualifies. But if it's left in here as $2,000, really what that means is that there's a placeholder for us to look for some systems that provide to meet the same interest, which is to provide some security, but also provide for a keyless entry for example, people who are disabled, who come up the ramp, who don't want to touch the door. And during the COVID times, of course, nobody wants to touch door handles. So, I would recommend that we leave that in there. But again, the money is not sitting here. It's sitting in the COVID Safe Restart Reserve funding, along with the other 200,000. So it gives us the authority to seek out options to replace the system we have, but obviously that $2,000 isn't going to get us what we want. So we come back to council when it's time to sort of bring forward another option.
Are you good with that, Councillor Craig?
I am.
Okay. So again, we had the motion. We need a second, please.
Second it.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carried. Okay, so moving on, staff report, proposed revisions to bylaw 416, 2015 council procedure bylaw 471. CAO.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Through Mayor Baker to council, this relates to the resolution that council passed at its February 4th meeting, whereby staff were directed to return to council in March with proposed revisions to the procedures bylaw, known as bylaw 416. So this bylaw, the council procedures bylaw, is a requirement of council under the community charter, which states that council must establish a bylaw to establish the general procedures to be followed by council in conducting their business. And of course, council has that bylaw now, bylaw 416. What we are bringing forward are a set of revisions that clean up the bylaw, but also provide for the direction that council gave us to provide for public input and to resolve some of the issues that we've been having during COVID, but also before COVID. So I'll just go through them generally, and I've attached a copy of the consolidated bylaw 416 and highlighted in the document the several changes. There's about 4 or 5 changes. The first change is on page 5 of the bylaw, which currently says that regular council meetings will be held on a schedule that is the first and third Tuesday of the month, beginning at 2:30 in the afternoon. Council made a decision some time ago to change that time to 7 p.m. So this makes the bylaw, it makes council legal with the bylaw, which is the required time that's set up. And that's important because people will sometimes go to the bylaw to find out when council meetings are, and so it should accurately reflect council's business. So that's the first one. The second change is relating to members appearing before council as delegates. So this isn't a change in our bylaw, but just want to point it out because we've had some trouble dancing around how to provide for public input at the meetings in order to meet the the basic local government principles of open, accountable, and accessible government. But of course, during COVID and the public health orders, council has been meeting virtually, which has made it difficult for public members to attend the meetings. Of course, these are recorded and they can observe later. But I just wanted to point out that the bylaw does provide for anybody to apply to appear before council as a delegate. And that's something that's in your procedures bylaw now, and it's unchanged in the proposed changes here. So that's an option for anybody, just as we had tonight with Morris Primo, and we had last week with somebody else. And next week we will have a different person again, or in 2 weeks. So that I just want to point that out, that is something. We do require that anybody wanting to attend a meeting be on the agenda, and as you know, and also in our bylaw, the bylaw states that the agenda is closed by noon on Wednesday. That gives us a couple of days to coordinate the materials and to for me to sit down with the mayor who chairs the meetings to go over the agenda and some of the details. And then, of course, the agenda is published on our website on Friday, and members of the public are able to pick up packages if they want. So that is an option for people that is existing right now with it, no changes in here, in that that anybody can appear as a delegate. So that takes care of a part of this. The most significant proposed changes and revisions include a new section in section 20. And this section provides direction to staff on how to manage public correspondence, which of course was the source of the discussion on the February 4th meeting. Currently, the section included in here requires the writer's name and address. The purpose is the deadline for the receipt, which of course is the Wednesday at noon, as well, pardon me, as how to handle anonymous, illegible, defamatory correspondence. So just as a bit of background, the province released this handout in December of this year. It's called the Council Procedures, the Procedures Bylaw Guide for BC local governments, and it's a best practices guide which lists the law but also the best practices. So I worked with the ministry to bring forward some of these changes, and the ministry felt that a good example of this issue had been very recently dealt with by the District of Sparwood, who developed a bylaw in response to very similar scenarios and interests, which was to provide for how correspondence would be met. So I have sort of borrowed those sections from the District of Sparwood. I've spoken virtually with the CAO who led those changes, and they've had legal reviews, which was a good thing. We didn't need to do that, given that we know that it's been done and endorsed through the ministry office as one of their best practices examples. So the proposed revisions clarify that correspondence that's received that's related to staff performance, administrative matters, items received after the 12 p.m. deadline on Wednesday, and matters that have previously been discussed by council within the past 12 months are not placed on the council agenda. Now those are obvious reasons. Of course, staff performance would be, as Councillor Craig pointed out earlier, unless it's relating to myself, they would be handled by myself for staff. And if it's relating to myself, then they wouldn't be on the public agenda. That would be an in-camera matter that council would handle on its own. Administrative matters, again, are handled by the administrative staff and not by council. And then matters that have been previously held by council are a lot of local governments and a lot of bylaws include this. For example, matters that have been decided through rezoning applications are generally required to wait a year before reapplication. There's some things in the charter that require this as well. It's really to manage council's time so that a singular issue doesn't continue to come back and forth. Once council has made a decision on it, reviewed it, made a resolution. Now that doesn't stop any councillor from retabling that issue, of course. A council member can table any issue at any time to be revisited by council. What this does is that it manages correspondence coming in on the public agenda. Again, it doesn't mean that council won't see that correspondence. It means that it won't be on the agenda for discussion as an item for council to discuss if it's been discussed and resolved by council through a formal resolution in the past 12 months. So that would be sent to council. And again, once we have our new website up and running in a few months, hopefully we plan to have a portal that will show all of the correspondence, and if it's private correspondence, then it would be set in a separate one. But so the correspondence isn't not being given to council, it's simply not being put on the agenda for council to review if council has resolved it within the past 12 months. So those are three of the those are the main changes in section 20. I just want to talk a little bit about the issue of some discretion, because the vetting of correspondence that's considered to be disrespectful or defamatory, again, while council will see that correspondence, we wouldn't put it, we're proposing not to put it on the public agenda. For one thing, it's not helpful if it's defamatory. It's not helpful if it's disrespectful. It doesn't help council manage its business in a respectful manner by putting disrespectful correspondence on your agenda. Again, it doesn't mean that council won't see the letter. It simply means that it's not on the public agenda. So those, and you know, staff are hoping to resolve some of those things with the writer through as an administrative function. However, you know, that it again doesn't stop council from taking on the matter through some other means. It doesn't put it on the public agenda. And then there's a new section that's been added in section 19, and that is section 7. That is also in subsection 20. Section 20, and that is again taken from the best practices book and the District of Sparwood bylaw, which is the newest one, just approved in a month or so ago. It clarifies that council's role is to listen and ask questions of delegates, and it clarifies that the public's right is to listen and understand how council has come to its decisions. It's not envisioned that council will enter into a debate with the public on the matters. It's not intended that the public would have equal authority or equal say on a matter. Council is charged with the responsibility of making the best decisions in the context of everything that you already know. For example, the financial plan, any professional development that you've participated in that gives you some depth on some of the laws, like any of the laws. It reinforces that there is a difference of power between council's role and the public's role. The public has the right to understand and listen to council's decisions, but not participate in the discussion on how to make the decision. And that's a really important point, because that in itself is going to be your greatest tool in carrying out your business in a respectful manner, which allows for you to get your work done without getting into a debate with the public, which of course can escalate and lead to some of the problems that I've heard about from this previous year. So I think that's an important section. It does appear in both section 19 that clarifies council's role to listen and ask questions, and it's in section 27 that council refrain from responding to requests or questions from delegates other than to ask clarifying questions, and likewise the public can ask clarifying questions, but not engage in a debate. So if there's a matter that needs more information, that can be referred to a CAL meeting with a request that the matter return with more information from staff. Council can choose to take no further action after a public member raises an issue. They can direct that the matter be tabled to a closed meeting if section 90 of the community charter provides for the matter to be considered in camera, or they can consider the matter at the meeting or at a future meeting. But again, the intent is to listen, hear the delegates, ask clarifying questions, and then thank the delegate, and then that delegate's time is over. So then council makes its decision among itself as to how to proceed. So those are the proposed revisions. I've included some links or at least references, which includes the District of Sparwood's council bylaw, pardon me, some of the laws that the BC government has passed to provide for the COVID measures. And I think I'll stop there.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a motion and a second on that. Is that correct?
I don't believe we've had a motion on that,
Yep.
have we? I could be mistaken.
The council received the revisions for bylaw 416, 2015. I believe I read that. So do we have a motion? We'll just pretend we didn't.
I move.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have further discussion? Opposed?
Wait, discussion, hands up.
I don't see hands up, sorry. Oh, there we go. Councillor Craig?
Please. Yeah, first of all, I want to say thank you for CAO for doing this, and with respect to, all due respect to Sparwood and the ministry, perhaps this council and the CAO is not aware that the city of Maple Ridge has also gone through this, and they put forward their own bylaw to govern meetings in February of last year, sorry. And they have a whole section here. Actually, they have several sections that this does not have. And I've noticed a few things I'd like to point out with this, but specifically, one of the things I'd like to point out is they have a code of conduct for the attendees to their meeting that is 2.5 pages long, that deals with things like bullying, harassment, name calling, violations. And so I think it would be incumbent upon this council, I'm going to send this entire council this particular bylaw, which is number 6472-2007. All of these things that should be what I would like to see included in our procedural bylaw that aren't currently there. Another thing that they have in there is something that former Mayor John McDonald wanted to put in, and that is section for orders of proceedings and business, a section for notices of motions and matters for introduction at future meetings. Now this, if you can see that, there you go. This is what former Mayor John McDonald gave all of the council. And what it is, it's a little book with carbon paper all through it for notices of motions. So we don't have motions on the fly. Now this would be something that I would like to see on our agendas. So any future meetings we might have could have council input on future notices of motions that are done in writing and on carbon paper for all copies, as well as the code of conduct stated in here specifically. That is, again, 2.5 pages long. And as well, if you go through this agenda here, I'd like to point out just a couple of things that I noticed. And if you give me a second, I'll turn to the right page. Page 114, section 9. Let me know when you're all there. You'll see section 9 will have subsections 1, 2, 3, and 4. But what former Mayor McDonald did for the entire council, including Councillor Kirshner there, and what the city of Maple Ridge has enacted in their legislation here, is the role of deputy mayor is rotated on an annual basis throughout all of the council. So each councillor would have a year or divvied up concurrently in equal portions if it's a 7-member council or a 9-member council, so to speak. And they would have a revised rotating basis of council position, which is also in our own charter, I believe, as far as who gets to choose deputy mayor. Now, another thing on page, where are we here? Page, I already talked about that. Page 121. Conduct and debate, paragraph 8. It says if a member does not adhere to subsection 21, paragraph 7, but there is no 21, paragraph 7. Section 21 points of order only has 2 sections, so that perhaps is just a typo, but it should be fixed. I think one final thing. I think I just had one final thing. No, I have 2 things. Yeah, 2 things. On page 122, at the top of it, subsection D, it says a member may speak to a question or may speak and reply for longer than a total time of 3 minutes, only with the permission of council. We've never timed this ever, but we should start. We had a time before where members of council have used up their time and just kept on and on the same topic. If it's a different topic, that's fine, but same topic, 3 minutes. So I believe a watch should be used going forward. And finally, on page 124, council may consider a matter that has not had the approval assent of the electors. Now, what that is if, for example, this council votes today to buy new stopwatches to count the 3-minute thing. So if they decide today to buy the 3-minute watches, they can't go out tomorrow and buy them. They have to wait until the minutes have been approved in the next actual meeting. So even though we approve something today, we can't actually act on that until the minutes have been approved, because what might happen is a council member or several members might revoke and change their vote. So we haven't done that in the past, but we should continue to do that going forward. And that's all I got right now. I'm going to send this council an email more fully explanatory with a more full explanation tomorrow on this. Thank you.
Okay. So perhaps we should, CAO, do we need to table this motion and bring it back at a later date? I'm sorry, you're muted.
Sorry.
CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Yes, that's what we'll do. And I think I would like to comment on the notice of motion. However, as you know, we've talked about, we are moving towards a paperless society. I understand, well, example is tonight, the information that you've provided is new. And so it is helpful to have information earlier. But a notice of motion in carbon copy, I think we're moving away from that. I think I understand the interest is to have some notice. And that is the idea, to have that prior to the agenda closing on noon on Wednesday. So, I think we need to explore that a little more, and then it'll be helpful to get your notes, and then we'll bring it back to council at some later date.
Okay. So at this point, we're going to we have a motion in play. So what is the procedure on that, CAO?
Well, I think we can defer this or refer the resolution to a subsequent meeting, which you can either choose the date now, or we can bring that back once council business provides for the time, probably sometime in April.
Okay. I agree. I think we should bring it back in April. Council, do you agree?
I do.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Bringing that back in April. Thank you. So we'll start on that in April. Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, sir, Mayor Baker, that's the resolution. So the resolution would be that council receive the proposed revisions for information and discussion, and that staff be directed to return to council to the April, probably the 16th meeting. I'm just going to look. The April 20th meeting, perhaps, to discuss additional resources, additional revisions as tabled by Councillor Craig.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay, moving on to staff report, proposed amendment to bylaw 309, the zoning bylaw, section 602, residential commercial RC. CAO?
Thank you. I just somehow haven't got that. Take me a minute here. Thank you, Mayor Baker. This is basically to correct what appears to be an administrative error in bylaw 309, the Village of Sayward zoning bylaw. It relates to the zone that's called residential commercial, of which there are approximately 4 or 5 properties. And the intention of that zone is to provide for it is the only zone, in fact, that provides for higher density, so dwelling apartments, dwelling row houses and townhouses, duplexes, retail, offices, service establishments, and restaurants. Those would be the principal uses. And then accessory uses would include secondary suites and buildings and structures that are accessory to the primary use. You'll note that in section D, the bylaw currently allows for single-family dwellings. Now, this is kind of tied a little bit to the concept that Morris was talking about earlier about the highest and best use. It would be a shame to see these very handful of small commercial properties be used for a single-family dwelling in the key parts of the village, which is set aside for commercial use and higher density use. There's no other place that allows for that. And so that, and comparing this to the official community plan, which designates the same, all those same properties as multi-residential commercial, intending that in the official community plan that this designation would provide for multi or high density residential accommodation, seniors housing, affordable accommodation units, special needs housing, and any other structures that provide for the high density residential commercial. So the provision that allows for a single family dwelling would appear to be an error in the zoning bylaw because it doesn't comply with both the community plan or the intent of that zone. So under the Local Government Act, sections 464 to 470, Council can hold first, second reading to amend this bylaw, and then is required to hold a public hearing, which provides for anybody who is either affected by or is interested in the revision to comment at the public hearing. And then there's some rules about when that can happen. It can't be, we must notify all the property owners within no more than 10 days before the public hearing, no less than 3 days before the hearing. So what I am asking council to do tonight, if you support this amendment, would be to take first and second reading and to, when we get to the bylaw part, but we'd like to remove this as a secondary use or primary use. And I guess I should talk a little bit about what that would mean. There's about 5 properties. Those properties would be rendered legally non-conforming uses if there was a single family dwelling on there, of which there is one with a single family dwelling. I've spoken to that property owner and advised her of this proposed amendment and explained to her what that would mean. Essentially what that would mean is if that building was more than 75% destroyed by fire, or if there was a discontinued use for a continuous 6-month period, the property owner would not be allowed to rebuild. They would be required to comply with the zoning, which provides for higher density than a single family dwelling. The properties are generally almost an acre. So that is the reason why it's not considered the highest and best use of the land to see it go to a single family dwelling in that part of the village, which is intended for commercial use and higher density. So that is the the staff report that's before you, and of course, I'm sure you have questions.
Any questions? No hands? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Craig.
It's the computer. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Just so I'm clear, the property in question has several trailer parks on it. Is that correct? Is that
That's
the property?
one of the properties. There's 5 properties. One is the apartment building. There's a vacant property. There's a property with a mobile home on it. And then there's the mobile home park, which in itself is already a non-conforming use because the zoning, of course, doesn't provide for mobile home parks either.
Right, okay. If we change that, would any of those tenants be evicted in any way, shape, or form?
No, this wouldn't affect them at all. They already would be affected if for some reason one of those mobile homes was destroyed by fire. 75%, they wouldn't be allowed to replace it. And if one of the paths was vacated, they wouldn't be allowed to replace it, but they're already in legally non-conforming use, so they already can't replace those trailers as they come off those paths. So this particular one will only affect one property.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're on F, is that correct, CAO? Staff report, proposed amendment to 309.
Yes.
Bylaw 309, zoning bylaw, section 602, residential and commercial. Recommended resolution that council receive the proposed amendment by bylaw 309, zoning bylaw, section 602, residential commercial report for information and discussion, and that council direct staff to return to council with a bylaw amend bylaw number 309 to the Village of Sayward zoning bylaw to remove subsection 602-1, subsection D, dwelling single family as principal use. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second? Second, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Bylaws, revenue anticipation bylaw 470, we went through that earlier. That the revenue bylaw number 470, 2021 be given first, second, and third reading.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion? Opposed? Motion carried. Council procedure amendment to bylaw 471, 2020. Recommended resolution that council procedure amendment bylaw 471, 2020 be given first, second, and third reading. Have a motion?
So moved.
That
That-
actually was already
That's
off the
already
table.
defeated. Yeah, so we don't have to go through all the steps on that, do we, CEO? CEO?
Correct. That's right, Mayor Baker. That's
Okay.
council's directed that we bring this back, so we'll refer this one to that April meeting as well.
Sounds good. Thank you. New business? Seeing none. We only have another 45 minutes left. Just kidding. Public question period, 15 minutes. The purpose of the public question period is to permit people in the gallery to ask questions of issues discussed by council during the meeting. Speakers will be allowed to ask one question each. If time permits, after everyone has an opportunity to speak or ask questions, speaker may be allowed a second question. For the record, they would state their name and address, no different than supplying a written comment or question. So the meeting will be held electronically. Any questions would be submitted in writing in advance of the meeting adjournment. So in camera, none. Adjournment. That the regular council meeting for March 2nd, 2021 be adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have discussion? Thank
I
you,
wanna get-
everybody.
I want to get
Motion
those
carried.
watches.
Motion carried. Thank you, everybody, for
Yeah.
staying this late. I appreciate it. You all have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.